their next witness.
The people would call Ivan Boyd.
Sir, before you sit down, I'll ask you to raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty for perjury?
I do.
Okay, you can go ahead and sit down.
Can you state your full name and spell it for the record?
Ivan Alexander Boyd, IVAN ALEXANDER, Boyd, BOYD.
Where were you employed in April of 2021?
WarAg Farms,
And how long had you been employed there at that point in time?
4 years.
Did you work for the farm business?
Yes,
And did you become familiar with Dale Warner?
yes,
Did you become familiar with Dee Warner?
yes.
What was your relationship with Dale Warner like?
He was my boss. We worked together closely. Besides the mechanic and one other hand, I handled most of the field work that he didn't have time to do or wanted me to do.
Okay. And you said besides the mechanic or another field worker, who are you referring to?
I was referring to Jim Hawkins and Randy Kane.
Okay. What was your relationship with Dee Warner at that time like?
I mean, as good as it ever was or wasn't. I mean, it depended on the day, but we were close.
Okay.
She was, again, my boss.
Okay. When you say it depended on the day, what do you mean by that?
To have good days, and she'd have bad days where, you know, something upset her, and you just, it was what it was, and you left it alone, and you just, if you couldn't help, you just stayed out of the way.
What were your typical job duties on the farm?
I ran truck for the trucking for the trucking company side of it, and then when I would come back, we'd farm.
Okay, when you say ran truck for the trucking side of it, what do you mean?
I helped out with the trucking. I would run loads for the trucking side of the company when we didn't necessarily have enough for me to do in the off season.
Okay, so when you say run loads, are you talking about doing deliveries or pickups?
Yes,
Or?
deliveries and pickups. So
Okay.
I would leave in the morning and come back usually sometime in the afternoon.
And when you talked about farming, tell me what that entailed.
I applied fertilizer. I worked ground, odds and ends kinds of things. Took care of the cows, stuff like that.
Okay. Did you do any of the mechanical work on the farm?
I did from time to time.
And what would that be?
General maintenance, mostly on the trucking side of it. I would do services, tire changes, general maintenance stuff up to diagnosing electrical, lights, stuff on the trailers. Just pretty much anything that needed to be done.
Did you ever have to do any welding on the farm?
Yes, from time to time.
Okay, and what types of things would you have to weld?
Brackets, small repairs on trailers, on trucks.
Where did most of your work get done?
Most of, as far as the mechanical work,
If you were working on the farm property that day on Munger Road, would you work in a specific area?
usually in the old shop. That's where most of the tools and all of the supplies and everything were.
Okay. Can I have Mr. Lee flip that first exhibit over for me, please? Okay, and I'm showing you People's Exhibit 263. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that area?
That is the layout of the home farm on Munger Road.
Okay. There should be a pointer up there on the stand with you, a little collapsible, pulls out. Do you see it?
Yes.
All right. Can you identify the old shop where you just testified you normally did work?
That would have been number 1 right here. Mostly in the front part here, that is where the main shop is, and then this back here was mostly just part storage.
I'm sorry, your head was turned,
Oh.
so,
This is number 1. This
Yep.
is the old shop. The front part here is where most of the work occurred,
okay.
and then the back part here is mostly storage.
Storage, okay. Who were the employees that you dealt with most often on the farm?
Probably Jim Hawkins and Dale.
Did you know Jason Gravel?
I did. I guess I didn't know him really well. At that time, I was still trucking quite a bit, and I would only be back for a few hours in the end of the day, and depending on what he was working on, I didn't really spend a whole lot of time with him, no.
Okay. Did you know Todd Narink?
I did.
And who was Todd to you?
Todd Nierick was the dispatcher. He's who told me what trailer I needed to take, gave me my marching orders for the morning as far as trucking.
Okay. And would somebody different give you marching orders for the farming side of things?
Usually Dale would give me whatever it was that I was doing when I got back.
Did you know Terry Narink?
I did.
And who was Terry? at the
Terry
farm?
is Todd's brother. He also drove truck for the trucking side.
Okay. Did you interact with him a lot?
Not really, other than to ask him if he came back and he had a problem with his truck. I would ask him what was going on with it, but other than that, no.
Okay. Were you familiar with Jaron Warner?
Yes,
And who was Jaron?
Jaren is Dale's son.
And did he also work on the farm at that time?
Yes.
And do you know what he essentially did for the farm?
Again, odds and ends stuff, mostly spreading fertilizer, dry fertilizer.
How long had you known Jaron in up to April 2021?
About 4 years, about the same amount of time that I worked there.
And did you have any opportunities during the 4 years to observe Jaron driving onto the property or off of the property?
Yes,
And did you know what vehicle he typically drove?
yes.
All right. I'm going to show you People's Exhibit 81. So this is a screenshot from a body cam dated 4/27/21. Do you recognize the person not with the sheriff's vest
Yes.
on? Okay, and who is that?
That's Jaren Warner.
Okay, so if I'm looking at this photograph to the left, you see two trucks, correct?
Correct.
All right, so the farthest truck to the left, away from Jaron, do you know whose truck that is?
That is Dale's new truck.
Okay, and how do you know that?
It has step boards and it is taller. He also had, if I remember right, black bumpers on his work truck, and that has a chrome bumper.
Okay, what about the vehicle directly in front of but to the left of Jaron?
The GMC,
Yes.
that is Jaren's truck,
Okay, and how do you know that?
because that was the that was the only black GMC that we that was on the farm.
And then you mentioned Jim Hawkins that you knew from the farm.
Yes.
Do you know what Jim Hawkins' typical duties would be on the farm?
General maintenance, whatever needed fixed. He was the head mechanic.
The head mechanic, okay. And then you mentioned Dale. Did Dale typically do work on the farm?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Do you know what types of things Dale did as far as the farming side of things go, or no?
Dale was primarily responsible for spraying any application of chemical, not fertilizer, Anhydrous as far as applying it to the fields owned by the farm, planting, anything small and little, usually on the weekends, spray weeds, stuff like that. Basic duties a husband will carry out.
Okay. Did you ever, during the 4 years that you worked there, observe Dale welding anything?
Once or twice, maybe, yeah.
Okay. Were they any big projects?
Not usually.
Who would typically do the welding work for the business?
Prior to him leaving, Randy Kane usually did most of the welding projects, and after that, I believe Jason did.
Jason,
Gravel.
okay.
Both of them had more experience and were better welders.
Okay. And did you know Zach Bach?
Yes,
And how long had you known Zach Bach?
about 4 years.
Okay. Was it, did you meet him at the time that you started at the trucking company or
I
prior?
met him about 2 months before I started working for Dale and Dee.
Okay, and what's your relationship with Zach Bach?
He's my fiance.
So have you been with him the entire time since 2017?
No.
Okay.
When I left the farm in June of 21, I also left Zach.
Okay. And did you at some point reconcile?
Yes.
When was that?
I believe it was September.
Of that same
somewhere in
year?
there, yes.
September
Correct.
21?
Correct.
So you talked a little bit about the sprayer. What is the sprayer? What's the function of that?
Sprayer applies fungicide, herbicide, and pesticides in liquid form to the field.
Okay. Do you know if there was a Kubota on the farm?
Yes,
How many were there?
there were 2.
Okay. I'm going to show you People's 21. Do you recognize that Kubota?
Yes.
And what did the other Kubota look like? Let me start there.
The other Kubota was gray. It had no glass in it and no doors and was fairly beat up.
Okay. When you say gray, was it like fully gray or?
It was gray, so everything that's black on there basically was gray, and the body panels were also camo on that one as well.
Okay, so it was camo with gray as opposed to black in the 21 photograph.
Yes.
Okay. And who would typically drive the Kubota in 21? This photograph right here.
That was Dale's.
Okay. Did anybody else drive that Kubota?
Very rarely, unless we were in a field with him doing tire work or something like that, but no. There would be no reason for anyone else to drive it on the farm.
Okay, and is that because there was the second Kubota?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to show you People's Exhibit 20, the JCB. Are you familiar with that item?
Yes.
And what types of things around the farm did you do with that item?
It loaded fertilizer. That was its main duty. It's sitting in the fertilizer barn in that picture. We also used it to load various things around the farm.
When you say the fertilizer barn, I'm going to refer you again to the map behind you, and I'm going to have you identify what you're referring to as the fertilizer barn.
In that picture there, it is sitting in this barn right here, barn number 2, and it's sitting about actually right where my pointer is.
Is there another name for that, JCB?
Telehandler,
A what?
a telehandler, but that we all called it the JCB.
Okay. Have you ever referred to it as a front end loader?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
I haven't, no.
You haven't personally. Okay. If you did welding on the farm, what location would you have done the welding at?
Every time that I welded, I did it in,
Objection relevance.
It goes to the location, the spray barn would not be a location that you would weld in, and that's exactly where we're alleging that Mr. Warner did the welding.
But what does it matter where he would weld?
I think it's relevant to, and where other people welded or where welding typically occurred on the farm is relevant, so I will rule that objection.
Thank you.
sorry, can you repeat the question?
Where would you typically do welding at on the farm if you were welding?
Typically, welding was done in the old shop, which would be the barn number 1 there on the chart. There were several welders in that barn, as well as in this part of barn number 5. There was also a welder.
Okay, and what do you call barn number 5?
That was the new shop.
All right, so I'm gonna take you back to number 1, the old shop, and can earlier you identified there's a front portion of the old shop and a back portion of the old shop. Can you identify which portion of that shop the welding would be done?
That would be done in the front part up here. Most of the, so there's a barn door and a bay in the center, and then all the different equipment is down this side of the shop here. The line right here is the separation between the upstairs and the downstairs part of it.
Okay, so essentially if you were inside the front portion of the old shop, you would have to go up a level to the second section in the back that you described?
You would have to go down. You would go down the
Down.
ramp into the back section.
Okay, perfect. And then in the new shop, that's a pretty big building there, number 5. Can you identify where in there, the new shop, the welding equipment would have been?
It would have been somewhere in these, I believe there was 3 bays in this barn here, so there's what's called an apron on this barn here. That is about the reference where the shop part stops, and the front part of that was storage. But this part was the shop, so that would have occurred somewhere in here.
Did you ever do any welding in number 7, building number 7?
Not that I can recall.
Okay, and what do you call building number 7?
Building number 7 is the spray barn.
Okay. Have you ever observed anybody else doing any welding in the spray barn?
No.
All right, we're gonna go back to the old shop, and I'm gonna show you some photographs of the inside so we can get a better understanding what that layout looks like. I'm gonna show you Exhibit 146 that was taken on April 27th, 2021.
Yes.
Is that the old shop?
Yes.
Okay. So you talked about a bay door. Is that what you just described on the front of that building, number 1?
Yes.
Okay, can you point to it again, please?
So that photograph is taken in this back corner looking east, and that door the overhead door that you see is on this end of the barn.
Exhibit 147.
Yes.
And so that's just kind of turning a little bit to one wall. Which wall would that be?
That would have been the south wall. So that would be looking, that walk door is in this corner, on this end of the barn. And that bench there is this front side here.
And there's some items up there. It looks like a shelf. Is that a shelf?
Yes.
Okay, and so what types of items are on that shelf?
That was all what we call consumables. So there would be paint, there would be there was lubricants, basically anything that you used part of a can, you'd put it up there. Wrenches, tools that you would use often.
Okay. When you say paint, are you referring to like a can of paint or?
Various cans of paint that would be, they were just whatever you, so say you welded on something, you didn't want it to rust, you'd hit it with whatever you had that kind of matched what was on it, and that was where we kept it. They were just half-used pieces.
Okay. So maybe I'm sorry, maybe I asked the question wrong. So the paint cans that you saw up there, are they your typical big paint cans, or are you talking about spray paint?
No, they would be spray cans.
Okay.
Everything that was up there was all aerosol. All the brake clean, all the consumables were aerosols.
People's 148? And again, is that just moving over again a little bit?
Yes, that would be further towards this end here.
Okay. And what types of items are in that area right there?
Again, they're consumables. There's some wrenches, our grinding discs, all that stuff was kept in pretty close proximity because we used it quite often.
All right, so you mentioned grinding discs. Were grinders kept in this area as well?
I believe so, yes.
All right, here's Exhibit 149, and that photograph was taken on October 11th, 2021. Can you just describe that for me?
That would be standing in the walk door that I mentioned before in this front corner here, and the viewpoint is looking back towards this back corner back here.
Okay, so if I were to walk all the way back there, and you discussed going to the back section from there, how do I get there from here?
You would walk directly almost into the center of that picture. There's a large red toolbox back there, and there was a path back there to get down a ramp to get into the back section.
Okay. And this is People's 150, and so, again, tell me where I'm at. Is this still the old shop?
Yes.
Where am I at in the old shop?
You are just zoomed in on the left side of that picture. That would be somewhere right in here along this wall.
Okay, and just for the record, it looks like you're pointing to the north wall of that shop.
Yes, that would be the north wall. Right along here is where that would be.
Okay, and what items are kept over there?
The welders, the plasma cutters, toolbox.
Okay, and that photograph was from April 27th, 2021. Were those kept in those same condition the entire time you had worked there? Were those kept in that same spot?
Yes.
Okay. People's Exhibit 151,
Yes,
and what is that?
that is the back storage part of the shop, the old shop.
Okay. And again, that photograph was taken April 27th, 2021. Exhibit 152.
Also of the back shop.
Okay. So if I just looked at, I'm looking at the further left corner of this photograph. Is that the ramp we just saw in the last picture?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm going to show you People's 153. What are these items up here? This is a zoomed in photograph of 152.
Those were mostly spare parts that we had laying around. We kept hitch pins, tow hooks for the back of trucks, chains, some consumables, a generator, portable welder, stuff like that back there.
Okay, if I'm looking at that end cap, there's two end caps in the photograph. If I'm looking at the one to the left, what items are kept up there?
Hooks and hitch pins,
Okay.
steel hooks and hitch pins.
I'm going to show you People's Exhibit 154. And where am I at now?
You would be standing at the top of the ramp, at the end of the toolbox. That would be this. You'd be standing about right here, just above the ramp.
What are these items? These, it looks like tanks. What are those?
Those are oxygen, acetylene, and argon bottles of gas. They're used for welding and cutting with torches.
Okay. I'm going to show you People's Exhibit 155. And is that directly, where's this located at?
That is located in the picture that you showed before, along the north wall of the shop where the welders and the plasma cutters were kept.
Okay, and what is this item that is red on the left?
That is a welder.
The red one?
Yes,
Okay, what's the blue one to the left of that?
that is also a welder.
What are the yellow tanks?
That'd be shielding gas, the argon gas that we use to shield with. That helps shield the weld while it's cooling, while it's being applied.
All right, I'm gonna zoom in and, do you recognize, maybe I'm gonna zoom in. Do you recognize what those are?
Those are protective gloves that we would use for welding or torching.
I'm gonna show you People's Exhibit 156. Where is this located at?
That is just left of the last picture on the north wall of the shop next to the toolbox.
What's this? Did it zoom in? Okay.
That would be a welding helmet.
I'm gonna show you People's Exhibit 157. Do you recognize that item?
Yes.
Okay, what is it?
It's a forklift.
How many forklifts were on the farm, to the best of your knowledge?
We had 2.
What would you use it for?
We would generally use it for moving anhydrous tanks around. We'd use them for moving pallets of stuff, like in that picture there, the power washer there on the pallet. We would move that out to where we would power wash. Anything that needed lifted or moved around that was too heavy to handle by hand.
I'm gonna show you People's Exhibit 158. Now that's a zoomed in photograph of the forks.
Yes.
Can you explain the forks to me?
Both of the forks had holes cut in them so that we could, it was easier to fasten things to the end of them. You could take, on the front of wagon tongue, for instance, you could put it over the tongue and drop a pin through it. It made handling and lifting things easier.
Okay. And I'm gonna zoom in a little bit if that's easier to see. So at the very ends of those forks, are those the holes you were talking about?
Yes.
All right. And did you ever use a chain or anything with those holes?
Yes.
For what?
Just basically as a safe point to lift, in order to, you could either put a bolt in it to keep a chain from coming off the end and, dropping whatever you were trying to lift, or you could put a pennel in there and be able to loop your chain through it. It just made for safer handling.
Would you typically work on Sundays?
Depending on the time of year, yes. Sundays were usually the day off, but
Okay.
in planting and harvest, it really didn't matter.
All right. Were you working on April 25th, 21 at the Munger Farm?
I was working on a personal vehicle of mine.
Okay, so were you supposed to show up for work that day?
I was not.
What did you have to work on your truck?
I believe I was doing radiator hoses.
Did anybody go with you?
My little brother came to help me.
How old was your little brother?
He's 4 years younger than me. So at the time, he would have been about 20.
I just wanted to make sure I'm talking about like a 5-year-old or something.
No.
When you got to the farm, do you recall approximately what time it was?
Mid to late morning, I believe.
Did you see anybody else on the farm when you got there?
I don't remember seeing anyone right away. I don't remember how long it was, but the first person that I remember seeing was Dale.
Do you remember approximately what time that was?
Maybe 10, 11 o'clock, somewhere in there.
Do you remember where you saw him at?
He came out to the shop, the old shop.
And is that where you were?
That was where I was working on my personal vehicle.
Did you end up working in the old shop all day, or did you go between buildings?
I predominantly worked in the old shop all day.
How many times throughout the day, if you recall, did you see Dale?
Maybe 3 or 4.
Was it always at the old shop or any other locations?
I believe it was. To the best of my knowledge, it was only up in the old shop. I was there most of the day.
Did you have the opportunity to view some surveillance footage in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And you originally watched a lengthy bit of surveillance footage. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you some surveillance footage from the farm from April 25th, and I'm going to stop and have a couple of questions here and there for you, okay?
Okay.
Probably going to play this for you. Okay, this is 4:25, approximately 6:58 a.m. And do you recognize the person in that? Is that the JCB?
Yes.
Okay, do you recognize that person?
Yes.
How?
You can tell by the name tag, the posture, the hairline. That is Dale in the JCB.
Okay. Did you think that this photo or this original image was strange to you at first?
Yes.
Objection as to relevance.
Well, let me rephrase the question. I'll withdraw that question and I'll ask another.
It allows us to move to strike the response.
Okay, so the answer will be stricken and the jury directed not to consider that response.
Did you notice anything different about Mr. Warner at this time?
Yes.
And what's that?
He's not wearing a hat.
Why is that different to you?
Because we all wore hats. I count on one hand the times I've seen Dale out of the house without a hat.
That's approximately 7:13 a.m. Can you show me on this map that's still in front of you where I'm looking on this footage? Where am I at?
The point of view is from this end of barn 6, which would have been the office. This tree here that is partially obstructing the view of that camera is this tree right here, and that viewpoint is looking out towards this barn out here. You're basically looking almost straight at the corner of this building, number 7 here.
Okay. And this is 7:23 a.m. Okay. Well, let me go just a little bit further. All right, can you identify again which direction on the map, where we're at on the map?
Yes, that is placed in the same location. This red mark here on the map is the farm scale. And the end of that is what you are looking at right there, so that JCB is traveling this way around the front corner of that barn.
Okay. So just for clarification, if I'm looking at the tree just to the right of it, I see a little bit of red.
Yes, and
Is that the scale that you were just referring to?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, approximately 7:30 a.m. And would that be coming from the opposite direction that, so before you said he was going towards the front of the office, so would that be coming from the front of the office?
yes,
And the direction, again, is that going back to the spray barn?
yes.
Okay. And you watched this footage, again, a couple of times, is that correct?
Yes.
And the person on the fork, is this a fork truck in the
Yes.
video? Did you recognize that person?
Yes.
How?
It was posture, glasses. It's Dale in the picture on the forklift.
Okay. Okay, again, we're looking at 7:40. And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but based on what you testified to earlier, does that appear as he's going back to the spray barn again at 7:42?
That is correct.
Okay, we're looking at approximately 11:18 a.m. Do you recognize this, I'm going to call it a vehicle that's in the photograph?
Yes,
What is that?
that is the sprayer.
Is that the sprayer that you kind of described to us earlier with the
Yes,
farming?
that is correct.
All right. All right, now we're at about 12:43 p.m. on the 25th. Where am I at?
You are sitting, that view is facing out the driveway, so the view is from basically the center of the barn facing forward.
All right. And is this where you were working on your vehicle?
That is correct.
Are you in this video?
Yes.
All right, and who's in this video with you?
The individual standing next to the truck is my little brother.
Okay. You can kind of see some legs and some dogs Do you remember who that was that came in there?
That was Dale.
I know it's about, a couple years later. Do you remember any conversation that you had with him that day?
I don't really. The only conversation that I remember from that day was when he came out to tell me that he thought Dee had left.
Okay. Was that one of the first times that you had interaction with him that day?
Yes.
All right, now we're looking at 12:51. Where am I at?
You are directly above the walk door in the front of barn 1 here, and you're looking just kind of straight down right in this general area in this corner right here.
Did you observe the vehicle that drove into this building?
Yes,
You talked about the 2 different Kubotas. Which Kubota would this one be?
that would have been Dale's.
We can only see a half of a body here. Do you recognize the body?
Yes.
Based on what?
Clothing, posture, that's Dale.
Again, just a different angle of the Kubota coming into the old shop.
Yes. You can tell that's Dale's because it has the doors open. The other Kubota did not have doors.
Thank you. All right, 12:51 and 50 seconds. Again, where am I at where am I at?
You are sitting in, or you are looking down from the center of the shop, the camera that was in the center here, and you are looking towards the south wall.
Is this your truck here?
No, that is the farm's truck.
Okay. Were you able to tell who that person was in that clip?
That is Dale.
And how did you recognize him?
Posture, clothing, mannerisms.
Okay, 12:52. Same thing going back to the Kubota?
Yes.
We have about 12:53. And what direction?
He's heading back towards the spray barn.
Okay, in the Kubota still?
That is correct.
$12:59. There's a vehicle that pulls in. Do you recognize that vehicle?
That appears to be Jaren's truck.
Okay. And what makes you believe that was Jaren's truck?
Jaren's truck's GMC in black. That was the only one that we had, or that the farm that came to the farm. You can also tell there's chrome underneath the there's chrome moldings underneath the driver and underneath the windows.
Okay. And within a matter of seconds, we see what do you see here?
That is Dale's Kubota heading back around the front of the barn.
Okay. And this is 1:13 p.m. Where am I on this map?
The Kubota is coming He's come down the ramp here and it is heading back this way. That's this lighter section here is the cement pad that you see in the picture there. And he is heading east towards barn 2.
One 14 PM,
Tails Kubota headed back.
same spot, okay. Now I'm at 1:14 and 37 seconds. Where am I at? I keep asking where I'm at, obviously it's not me, can you identify where we're at?
Yes.
Thank you.
You are looking, you're sitting about right here in the back in the storage shop. The photos that we looked at that you showed me before here of the storage area in the back of the old shop.
Okay. Again, we see the back of a person. Are you familiar with who that is?
Yes, that's Dale.
Okay, this is 1:15 PM. Where am I at now?
You are sitting in about the same spot, but you're looking out the back. So there is, in this back part of the shop, there is, that overhead door is on this wall here, pointing this way. So you're sitting about right here, looking back
Okay.
towards the north.
Okay. Okay, now we're at 1:15 and 23 seconds. Is that the same person?
Yes.
Okay, now we're at 1:26 PM.
That is Dale's Kubota heading back around the front part of the office, heading back towards the spray barn.
Okay, now we're at 1:46 PM.
Be the sprayer.
Tree limbs are awful, huh? The tree branches?
Yes, they are.
Okay, we're at 1:48 PM. What's that?
That is the sprayer.
Okay, how is that, what direction is that heading out on this map?
That would be pulling along around the outside of the scale and heading this way towards the road, and it appears that it pulls up and around and is then facing back east in front of the shop. Or, I'm sorry, in front of the office.
So this is 2:18 PM. Do you see all the way in the right corner of this photograph?
Yes.
What is that?
That is the sprayer.
How do you know that?
The distance between the bottom of the hood and the ground, the spray booms that are sticking out in front. We didn't have any other equipment that matches that description.
Okay, we're at 2:41 PM. And do you see the spray? Oh, do you see the sprayer?
Yes.
Okay. Where's that parked on this map?
That is parked about right here. Somewhere right in the middle of this driveway pointing north.
Okay. Where would that sprayer typically be parked when coming back to the farm, if you know?
If it wasn't being parked back into the spray barn, it would be lined up in this orientation, the same as these vehicles here along this row and this gravel next to the driveway.
Okay. Okay, now we're at 2:46. Again, where am I at?
You are sitting on, that viewpoint is from here, looking back. These three tanks that you see here are the three tanks that are in the picture. Dale's Kubota is over here, and the semi that's pulling around here is sitting somewhere right in here.
And what's this item at 2:49?
That is the versatile tractor.
What is the versatile tractor?
Versatile tractor was primarily used to pull the corn planter on the farm.
Do you know who typically drove that planter?
That would be Dale.
So again, at 2:51. Are we back by the scales?
Yes.
Okay, now we're at 3 PM. Approximately 3:01, I apologize. Do you recognize that person walking?
That is Dale.
And where's that at on the farm?
That he is walking in this little area right here towards the scale in this way around the corner of the office.
We're looking at 3:12 PM. Where am I at now?
You are in the new shop, and you would be, so this ramp here came out the east side of the barn. You're sitting about right here, looking this way, out towards the east.
What's this item being pulled out of the What building is this, first off?
That is the new shop.
Okay, and what's this
Building
item?
number 5 on your,
Okay, what's this item being pulled out of there?
that is the corn planter.
Okay, we're at 3:13 PM approximately.
It's a same piece of equipment, better view, coming around the front part of the office there, around the corner, heading west.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, that's a better view of the versatile pulling the corn planter
Okay,
around the front corner of the office.
okay. And now we're at 3:17 PM.
Yes.
First, show me where I'm at on this.
That semi truck is sitting in this orientation. The front of it is about right here. You're looking down the side of this barn, right here. Where that little line right there, that's where that cement is stopping in that photo there.
Okay, and is that a Kubota in this frame?
Yes,
And which Kubota would that be?
that would be Dale's.
Now we're at 3:18 PM.
That'd be Dale's Kubota.
Three 21 PM.
It's the same machine.
3:41 PM. And again, is that the area you just showed us on the
Yes.
side of the new shop?
That is correct.
Is that also the front of that, I can't remember what you called the planter, but whatever pulled the planter?
That would be the, are you referring to the east end of the fertilizer barn here?
No, I'm talking about the piece of equipment, the red piece of equipment.
Yes, that is the front of the, versatile tractor, yes.
Okay, now we're at 4:29 PM. And do you recognize, whose vehicles those are?
The vehicle down closer to the bottom right corner of the screen is Dale's Kubota. The pickup truck pulling out of there is Todd Nierick's pickup truck.
Did you see Todd Nierick on the property on the 25th?
I don't remember, no.
Now we're at 4:32. What am I looking at?
You are looking in that out of that same camera, on the back side of the old shop, looking out this way, and that is the JCB.
Okay, do you recognize, the person that's in there?
It appears to be Dale Warner.
Okay, now we're looking at 4:37 PM. $4:39 PM. All right. Now we're at 4:52 PM.
Yes.
Where am I at?
You are in the old shop in the center, and you are looking down into this corner here where the welding equipment was kept.
And do you recognize this person?
Yes,
Okay. And who is that?
that appears to be Dale.
And is that because you've watched the surveillance footage again, you've gone over it?
Yes,
Okay.
and that day, he was the only one that would have been on the farm with, uniform shirt on like that. Everybody else was in either sweatshirts or, their own personal clothes.
Okay. What, are you familiar with the item that, the defendant's leaned down in front of?
Yes,
And what is that item?
that appears to be a welder.
Okay. Is there, I'm not familiar with welders, I don't weld. Is there something on the bottom of welders?
Yes.
What?
So down in that front section there on a welder, there's a little flip down. It's kind of like a book. Shows you the different thicknesses, where to set the welder for different materials, thicknesses, so that you can properly weld.
$453, what's that red item?
The one against the wall there is a welder.
Okay. 455. Again, where am I at? Just remind me.
You're sitting above the walk door in the front of the shop here, and it appears as though Mr. Warner's walking out the front overhead door.
Okay, and if I didn't already say it, it's 4:56 p.m. at that time? $4:56 and 30 seconds approximately. $4:56 and 44 seconds. Again, did you watch this a couple of times?
Yes.
And were you able to identify the item in Mr. Warner's hand? Or not in the video?
What's that?
Or not in the video? It's okay if you can't identify it in the video. Okay. $504. What's that vehicle?
That is Dale's Kubota.
Okay. 505. Remind me where I'm at.
You were in the back of the shop in the parts room, about right here, and you just walked in that door, right here.
You recognize that person?
Yes,
Okay, who's that?
it is Dale.
5:06 p.m. Is that again Dale?
Yes,
And it appears to me he's walking down the ramp. Is that accurate?
yes.
And were you able to identify the items in his hand?
It appears as though he's carrying the welding mask and the gloves.
Okay, 5:07. 6:06. See a little bit of movement in there? Okay. Okay, 6:08. JCB again?
Yes.
6:10, did you see which direction the JCB was going?
It appears to be going towards the spray barn.
Okay, 6:26, who's this?
That is my pickup.
Okay. So at some point on the 25th, did you leave the farm?
Yes.
And for what?
I replaced the radiator hoses and I drove to the gas station on the corner to make sure that I didn't have any leaks and to get it warm.
Okay. So is this when you're arriving back to the property?
Yes.
And it looks like you are driving now towards the spray barn.
I did. It does.
And then at 6:37, it appears that you're leaving. Do you
Yes.
remember seeing Dale at the spray barn that day?
I do not.
Okay, there's 6:39, the JCB again. JCB, could you tell what direction that it was heading at 6:40 p.m.?
It appears as though it's headed towards the spray barn.
All right, at 6:41. Were you able to, after watching that, determine what that was that went by?
Yes.
And what was that?
That was the JCB.
Okay, and did you recognize anything in the bucket?
Yes.
How?
By the shape and the color.
Okay, and what'd you recognize?
A welder.
Okay, and describe what you meant by the shape and color.
Most of our bottles were yellow. At least the ones we used for welding, that was the color for that particular shielding gas. And all of our MIG welders were blue Millers.
Okay, 6:43, where am I at?
You are in the new shop, looking out at the same camera that we watched the Versatile leave earlier, about right here, and you are looking towards the east.
Okay. And right about in the middle of that footage, do you see the blue and yellow item that you were referring to?
Yes,
Okay, and what is that?
that is a welder.
Okay. I need to figure out how to switch back to the photographs. How often during, I don't want that one. How often, while you were worked there, did you go to the spray barn for anything?
Depended on the time of the year,
Okay, and what would you need to go back there for?
either to load customers with chemicals, load a tank with fertilizer for customers, things of that nature.
I'm gonna show you People's Exhibit 84. Do you recognize that item under the camouflage blanket up there?
Yes,
What is that?
that is a safe.
And had you known that safe to be in there prior to April 25th, 2021?
Yes,
Do you know how long it was in there?
at least 6 months to a year, if I remember right.
All right. During the 4 years that you had worked on the farm, had you ever seen a tank an anhydrous tank inside the spray barn?
No.
I'm gonna show you People's Exhibit 85. Do you see a tank in the spray barn right there?
Yes.
And would that not have been common then?
No.
Do you know if that spray barn had a lock on the door?
I believe it did, yes.
I'm gonna show you People's Exhibit 178. Do you recognize that area?
Yes.
Where am I at?
You are standing, arms are too short. The cement pad here is the overhead door. Next to the overhead door, there's a walk door, which you see in the picture, so you are standing about right there, and looking in this direction towards the west.
Okay. And would that be the door on that spray barn then?
Yes.
For clarification, can you, so the spray barn, you just talked about the south side of it, correct?
Yes.
On the north end of that, was there another way to get in?
Yes.
And how was that?
There's an overhead door. There's it's a straight through building. There, you drive through this side of the barn here, and you can come out the back side and back out around the drive.
Okay. Did you ever work with the anhydrous tanks on the property?
Yes.
And where were they stored at?
Typically, they were stored along the driveway behind the fertilizer barn.
Show me on the map.
Typically, they were stored right along here when we had them at the farm, in season, and out of season they would be stored at two different properties, the Paragon Road Farm and the Carson Road Farm.
Okay. Now I'm gonna have you flip to the, Mr. Lee, can you flip to the next map for me? 264. Did you say the Carson Farm or the Carson Barn?
The Carson Road Farm.
Okay, and where's that at in relation, so show me first the Munger Farm.
This here's the Munger Farm, the main home farm.
All right, and where was the Carson property?
That would be this one right here.
All right, and where's the barn you're talking about?
It would be, there was this barn out back here that would have a few of them in the backside back here, and then there was the front barn that didn't usually hold any anhydrous tanks.
And then you indicated the other property where you guys stored tanks was?
Yes, the Paragon Road Farm.
Okay. Mr. Lee, thank you for your help. All right, I know this is a bigger, more stretched out map, but can you find the Munger Farm on this map?
I believe that the Munger Farm is up here, which would be the home farm up here.
All right, I'm gonna have you wait to turn to me before you talk, because I can't, you're soft spoken, I can't.
This is the Munger Farm up here, the home farm.
Okay, and the Paragon property we're talking about where some extra tanks would be stored, where's that at?
That would be down here.
And do you know approximately how far away it is?
Mile, maybe mile and a half. Around the corner and down the street.
Okay. You discussed the anhydrous tanks that were lined up. Can you put the first map back up, please? So the anhydrous tanks that you discussed that were lined up right there on the north side of the property,
Yes.
are those full tanks, empty tanks? What are those?
Those were generally full tanks.
Okay, and were you storing full tanks or empty tanks at the Carson property?
Usually empty.
Okay, what about Paragon?
That would usually be a mix. Whatever we had that was filled and did not get used would be taken over there. And then whatever empties we had at the end of the season that we didn't refill because we didn't expect to have another customer, those would also go over there.
Okay. Were you ever part of the filling of the anhydrous tanks?
Yes.
And how do you fill a tank?
There are two hoses, one for gas and one for liquid. So you'd take the forklift out there and generally, if a customer brought the tank back empty, they would just drop it up here in this area and you'd scale it back in on the scale. And then these are the mother bottles. That's what we filled the tanks out of. If our driver had brought them back, he'd just bring them back and line them up around here. So you would connect both the hoses and make sure that your bleeders were closed. And then you would open your valves and start the pump, fill it until the level gauge was up to a certain, usually about 80%. You had to allow room for expansion in the heat. And then you would shut it off and use your bleeder valves to clear the section in the line that you connected it to the tank. And then after that, you could take your lines back off the top of the tank.
You mentioned people would bring tanks and drop them off back by the mother tanks. Is that what you said?
That would be the driver. If he brought them back and scaled them back in, they could be taken back to be directly filled again.
Okay, so the ones that are being brought back there are the empties that need to be filled.
Yes.
Okay, and what did you do after you filled them?
Once they were filled, they got parked back in this line along the north end of the farm.
Okay, was there anywhere else that those tanks were parked if they were full?
Usually, we had 4 larger tanks for the farm. Those were ours. Those, to the best of my knowledge, never went out to anybody. They were larger. They were more dangerous to pull down the road. They were heavier. They stored more. Those would be parked where I pointed right there. Those 4 tanks there, those were the farm's tanks. But other than that, that was not usually. There wasn't usually any other place that they were parked. No.
I'm going to show you people's Exhibit 161. And do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
That is the back of the Carson Road Farm.
Okay, and so that would have been to the north, the one that you just showed us to the northeast? Okay.
Yes.
And this is People's 162. What are those?
Those are anhydrous tanks.
And People's 163.
Again, anhydrous tanks.
And the previous one I just showed you, was that at the Carson property?
Yes.
What about this one?
This is also the Carson property.
Okay. People's 164.
There's one liquid fertilizer tank and more anhydrous tanks in that barn there.
Okay.
That appears to be the same barn.
And when you say one liquid fertilizer, I'm gonna assume it's the only one that looks different from the other three.
Yes, it would be the blue one with the orange frame.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna have you look at exhibit 165. Is that also on Carson?
Yes,
All right, and what are these?
those are anhydrous tanks.
Do you know the sizes? Are there different sizes of tanks?
Yes.
Okay.
We had several different sizes.
Okay.
They were different shaped. Some of them were tall, shaped more like a barrel. Others looked more like a propane tank, but they all served the same function.
And were you shown a handful of photographs of tanks that were found on the Paragon Road property?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna show you People's Exhibit 90. Is that one of the tanks from Paragon Road?
Yes.
So I wanna look at the design of these. Tell me about the front end of that anhydrous tank.
The front end of that tank there has your valves where you would hook up to fill it. That would be the two smaller ones closer to the back of the tank, or to the left in that picture. There is the larger valve in the front is where you would hook on to empty the tank. They're protected by a steel cage in case you had it come off of the truck. That protected the valves from being knocked off and emptying the tank in public. And then towards the back of the tank there, that little white piece that sticks up, that's protecting a relief valve.
I'm gonna, oh, I can't do that. So the very back of that photograph, I was gonna
Yes.
try to use the laser, but I can't, it's not working. So that is a cover for what?
That is a relief valve.
Okay.
Under pressure and heat, when it gets warmer out, it expands and it causes pressure in the tank. If the tank is overfilled, that relief valve will pop and keep it from turning into basically a giant bomb.
Okay. I'm gonna show you People's Exhibit 92. Is this a smaller version of the anhydrous tanks we've been looking at?
Yes.
Okay. And again, we see the
Yes.
Okay. The back end with describe it for me again?
The relief valve. You're not actually looking at the relief valve in that picture. You're looking at a pipe that's welded onto the top of the tank to protect that relief valve. For the same reason, there's a cage over the valves on the front.
Okay, and that's what you were looking at in the last photograph too,
Yes.
correct? All right. And are most of the anhydrous tanks, well, let me ask you this. Have you dealt with the anhydrous tanks the whole time you worked at the Warner Farm?
I believe I started filling them in, I think it was my second year there.
Okay. Did you deal with them in some sort of capacity while you worked there then?
Yes.
Would this be I'm back to Exhibit 90. This valve on the back, the cover that protects it, would that be typically the way that they're designed?
That was standard for all the tanks that I remember us having, yes.
Okay. And you were shown a photograph of People's Exhibit 100, Tank 34. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And, well, let's first describe the front of that tank for me.
The front of the tank still has a cage over the valves there. That is, it's fairly standard. That is shaped a little bit more like a propane tank.
What do you mean?
So we did have tanks that were shaped like that. If I remember right, we had three basic kinds. We had the big ones. There was 2 front loads, and 2 top loads, and then we also we had some taller ones that were more barrel shaped. We also had some more that were more torpedo shaped, a little smaller in diameter, a little longer in length.
Okay. Have you, so let's look at the back of this tank 34. And can you describe the back of that for me?
It appears as though it has a different cover over the relief valves.
And have you seen a cover like that on the anhydrous tanks that you've come into contact with over the years?
I did not remember having a cover on any of our tanks like that.
Your Honor, may we approach?
And we'll take a 5-minute recess here and come back and continue with testimony. So if you'll just stay there for a moment, Mr. Boyd. Yes, sir. Okay, you can step down now.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Are we ready for the jury?
Well, yes, do you want to witness on this tamper?
Oh, yes. So, Ms. Boyd, if you come back and sit in the, at the witness stand. You may.
You're ready, Judge. You may be seated.
A few more questions for you, Mr. Boyd. I'm going to show you some still images from the surveillance footage that we watched to see if you identified any of the items. I'm going to show you People's Exhibit 38. First off, we only see a half of a body. Do you recognize that person?
It appears to be Dale.
Okay, and that was based on also watching the surveillance footage?
Yes.
All right, and what does it appear he's carrying?
He has grinding discs and a corded grinder.
I'm going to show you People's Exhibit 43. We saw it in the video, the surveillance footage. This is going to be approximately 1:15 p.m. Did you see the item that was taken from that surveillance?
From the back wall there,
Yes.
that would be a chain.
Okay. I'm going to show you People's Exhibit 44. This is at 3:12 p.m. This is the new shop, correct?
Yes.
All right, and I'm just going to zoom in here to, you see this big green
Toolbox. yes.
toolbox? Okay, what is directly to the left of that?
That would be a welder.
And is that because, what do you recognize in there?
So you can see the stinger or the lead that's on the front of it. You can see the color and the shielding gas bottle on the back of it.
I'm going to show you People's Exhibit 50 that I asked you in the surveillance footage if you recognize that item. Here's a still image of that. First, do you recognize the bottom half of that body?
Yes.
And who is that?
That is Dale.
Okay. Now can you tell what that item is in his hand?
It appears that he has grinding or cutting discs of some kind in his hand.
I'm going to take you back to Exhibit 56. Again, this is the new shop. 6:43 p.m. on the 25th. I'm going to zoom into the green toolbox, I'm calling that a toolbox, is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay. And the item that you described as a welder that was sitting to the left of the toolbox, is that item there any longer?
It is not next to the toolbox, it's sitting in front of the toolbox, and you're viewing the side of it instead of the front of it.
All right, and is that the item that you identified as being in the
Yes.
front of the JCB? Okay. And we see the back of somebody walking away. Do you
Yes.
recognize that person?
It appears to be Dale.
During the course of your employment for the Warners, did Dale ever have to write you any notes or leave you any instructions or do anything that you had to read his handwriting?
From time to time, in the fall, we would take grain tickets. Also, if he happened to be the one that scaled out an anhydrous tank, either for himself or the farm, we would still weigh it and keep track of it. So yes, I've seen his handwriting. Yes.
Okay, and I showed you certain exhibits that were certain handwriting examples, correct?
Yes.
I don't want to say examples, certain notebook pages or loose leaf papers, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, and those were items that were taken from the farm in October of 2021. And did you observe, well, let me approach the witness, Your Honor. I've got exhibits 179 through 190, and we have it stipulated to something, so but I'm not certain. Okay. Can you just look through those and don't tell me what they are? For the record, Your Honor, Mr. Boyd has People's Exhibits 179 through 190 that he's reviewing. Are you done?
Yes.
Okay, and those items were some lined papers with writing on them and some loose leaf blank papers with writing on them. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
And some of them appear to be screenshots of map locations. Is that also accurate?
That is correct.
And there was handwriting on those documents. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you recognize the handwriting?
Yes, it appears to, yes.
And whose handwriting is that?
That appears to be Mr. Warner's.
Okay. I'm going to also hand you People's Exhibits 191, 192, and 193, and have you look at them. I'm going to stop you real quick, Mr. Boyd. 191
Just that one?
have you had the opportunity to look at that before?
Yes.
Okay, describe the front page for me. What is that?
Notebooks.
Okay, and what type of notebook? What color is it?
The top one is black.
All right, and then when you flip through the pages, do the contents have handwriting in them?
Yes.
Okay, and are you familiar with that handwriting?
Yes.
And whose handwriting is that?
It appears to be Dale's.
Okay. 192, can you tell me what the front page of that item is?
It's a black notebook.
Okay, a different black notebook than the first one?
It appears, yes. Yes, it appears to be a different black notebook.
All right, and can you kind of flip through the pages on that one? And you've looked at that before?
Yes.
And do you recognize that handwriting?
Yes,
And whose handwriting is that?
it's Dale's.
I'm gonna have you look at Exhibit 193. And what's the front of that look like?
It's a notebook,
Okay, color?
pink.
Okay, can I have you flip through that? And you looked at that previously?
Yes,
And do you recognize the writing?
yes.
And whose handwriting is that?
It appears to be Dale's.
I have no additional questions for Mr. Boyd at this time.
Okay, it is close to noon, so we are going to be breaking for lunch. We'll resume at 1:30 PM again. Before you go, I will just remind you that during the trial, don't read, listen to, or watch any news reports about the case. Under the law, the evidence you consider to decide the case must meet certain standards. For example, witnesses must swear to tell the truth, and lawyers must be able to cross-examine them. Because news reports do not have to meet these standards, they could give you incorrect or misleading information that might unfairly favor one side. So to be fair to both sides, you must follow this instruction. Thank you, and we'll see you at 1:30.